Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, mate, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. And Ben, welcome back to you.
Thanks, mate. It's footy season, Bryce. We're back.
We're back. Mate, if only people could see what I see now on our screen is a disturbing sight. You and I are wearing beanies. We look like we're
warm.
We're on our way down.
Like we're supporting a very good cause. That's what we look like we're doing.
So, folks, just to describe for those of you that are listening, we've got the MND fighting beanies on, which is a terrific cause. Clearly, that's something that's a big part of the Queen's birthday holiday, Ben, which wasn't necessarily televised the same way this year as it was generally, but there was a few people who got involved. But we just wanted to do our part. We love footy. We love what the cause is about, and we just wanted to shine a bit of a light on the MND freeze, Ben. So we're going to put a link in the show notes for people to check that out.
Sounds good.
So they can support it if they want to get on board.
And any chance for Freo against Brisbane at home? Brizzy at home? The Lions? Are they going to maul you guys? Or what?
Again, at the risk of not turning this into a footy podcast, I don't think we are much of a chance, Ben. Thank you for asking. With
so you're tipping the Lions?
Slightly condescending tone, which didn't go unnoticed. But how about you? How about you with... have you got any swagger at all for tonight's game, or are you going to play the percentages? And
at the end of the day, I think we've done the work. We've done the work. We got every chance of winning.
All right.
So that's go the Pies.
So shout out to all the footy fans who listen to our podcast, who are as just excited as Benjamin and myself about the game starting tonight. And for the rest of you, hopefully you haven't fast forwarded too far past our intro. Because you don't really want to listen to us. But the big freeze, get on board. We'll have some details in the show notes. Hey, Ben, in the last couple of weeks, I've been hinting that, I haven't been hinting, I've been telling people that we have got a course launch coming up. It's launched on Monday. I've been super excited about the take up to date. There's been hundreds of people that are actually taking that up, which is really great. I'm excited for a couple of reasons, because the course has been pitched at a level that helps people start and build their property portfolio, but it's also pitched at a price that I think I'm really proud of that, because most people charge an enormous amount of money for courses. So we're gonna talk a bit more about that a bit later on, but just letting people know that in the show notes there is a link to our course that you and I put together, which we're really excited about putting out into the marketplace.
Yeah, Bryce. I mean, ultimately, it brings together everything that we've been talking about and takes a deeper dive. And one thing that's hard in an audio environment is to take you through the numbers. We do a lot of numbers and a lot of, so it'll solidify a lot of the thinking and work and learnings that we've been pushing out there. So that's what I really like about it, in terms of, I'm a visual person. I love the numbers, I love the data. So from that point of view, it's very helpful for those people who are just needing that final bit of information to bring it all together.
Yeah, so as I said, I'll go through a bit more detail later on. Stick around for that. We're doing a campaign this week, Ben, that finishes on Sunday, where we're offering a discount to anyone who wants to come on board. So check that out, folks. We'd love for you to be a part of that if you want to learn a little bit more about how to start and build your property portfolio. Hey, Ben, I just want to read a couple of reviews.
Sure.
Because we're still going to give away some courses, Ben, as we have been for the last few weeks. This one here is from, this is only a 4-star, Ben, all right? So just want to make sure that I didn't continually read out all the 5 stars. And this is from the Kirk 86. Love the work Ben, Bryce and the Stig, in brackets, the heavy lifter do. Yep, fair enough, fair call. Have been an avid listener to all episodes, oftentimes on repeat, much to the displeasure of my wife. I've been to 2 seminars and had discussed buying an off-the-plan apartment in a newly constructed building, but after each meeting felt like things seemed a little too good to be true. I came across your podcast by chance and soon became hooked, as I've since jumped down the rabbit hole. The lessons I've learned allowed me to see through the fog from the selling agents, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching the spruiker's smile drop off his face when I told him I had been listening to your podcast.
We're making traction. We're making headway.
That brought a smile to my face, I've got to say. Needless to say, I've not had any follow-up calls from them. I've listened to plenty of other podcasts and read other investment books with differing strategies, but I always come back to here where I started learning the fundamentals. My only issue is being unable to get my other half interested in the podcast, hence the 4 out of 5 stars, Ben. If you could release a short course on hypnotherapy to convince her to at least listen to the first 20 episodes, that would be outstanding. We're not going to condone that at all. I would also be willing to change my rating to 5 out of 5. So there you go. The Kirk.
Put it on in the car when you're driving somewhere. That's probably
exactly
where you've got a captured, enclosed environment.
It's probably the fact that you and I bang on too much about footy at the beginning that turns her off. So there you go. So that's 4 stars. This one's from Dylan. The end of 2017 was a hard one for my fiance and myself. I had just been made redundant due to the mining company I was employed by going into administration. And on top of that, our son was due to be born in another 2 months, Ben. We had some savings, but didn't feel comfortable at all. Fortunately for us, I stumbled upon the property couch and became obsessed. Thanks to Money Smarts and all the information I absorbed through the show, we were able to get through the hard time. And when I found a new position, used the trap surplus for a deposit on our first home. That is terrific. We are now manufacturing equity in this property by doing some renovations, which will go towards purchasing our first investment property. Cheers, guys, for helping change my mindset about money, and I look forward to achieving my financial goals by following the fundamentals. I was so excited to read that they got their first home, Ben, and that things are looking up from that redundancy. I couldn't help but read that one out. So, Dylan, reach out to us and we'll send you a course. And the final one here is from Talia Emily. What an awesome podcast you guys have. I discovered it maybe 4 months ago and can't believe how invaluable your information is. I've been saving hard for my deposit on my first home and now look to implement the rules of the A, B, C, and D now and forever. Here's the bit that I like, Ben. I'm a 23-year-old female determined to break the chain of being an Aussie battler and couldn't be happier I found your podcast. Thank you, Ben and Bryce. Ben, as you know, I can relate to that Aussie battler. It's something that I had to overcome. So I figured I really wanted to highlight that to show people that if you do have some conditioning around being a battler, you can actually change your mindset and change your path. You may not be able to rewrite the beginning of your story, Ben, but you can always rewrite the end of your story. So Talia, reach out to us. We would love to give you a copy of Start and Build so that you can forever implement the rules of A, B, C, and D. There you go, Ben.
Well, so I love that story, right? Because we can put the information out there, but there's 3 examples of 3 people who ultimately are taking action. Okay, so we can guide them and give them the knowledge that they need, but those 3 people are clear examples of people taking action on the information, and that's what makes us the most proud of what we do in paying it forward to help them get to where they want to get to. So that's a great story.
There you go, folks. Reach out to us and we will give you access straight away and you can start consuming that content. It's the Netflix for property investors, Ben. Hey, my Mindset Minute theme today, Ben, is this is Brian Tracy. You know Brian Tracy, don't you? The American sales guy.
Yep.
He's got some amazing content. He's in the same league as Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn with some of that generation of personal development. But he says personal development is a major time saver, Ben. The better you become, the less time it takes you to achieve your goals. And the reason I put that in is because clearly I'm a student of personal growth, personal development, Ben. But the whole purpose for me is to continually upgrade my thinking. And I always think about Warren Buffett and Charles Munger. And in Charles Munger book, he talks about how he's trying to create this database, this catalogue of frameworks in his mind, so that then when he needs to process some information that comes to it, it's almost like the CPU is running around. How can I process this in terms of the frameworks that I see? And I must admit, one, it's embarrassing for me to even suggest that I'm anywhere near Charles Munger, but that's my aspiration. I want to have the same ability to, when information comes into me, I want to be able to filter it through some frameworks so that I can get better output. So I thought that was on the backdrop of today officially launching our course, saying it's open and to a certain extent, being able to achieve financial freedom, Ben, requires a lot of people who grew up in some form of scarcity rather than abundance to grow personally and get better money beliefs and get better strategies around how they manage their money. So I thought that Brian Tracy quote might be a good one. It's personal development is a major time saver. The better you become, the less time it takes you to achieve your goals, Ben.
Love it, Bryce, love it. So what do we got today?
Today is we're going to talk about why job security doesn't equal income security. And the backdrop is really simple, because we've clearly tried to provide, our goal was to provide authority and leadership through the pandemic so that people could get some calm throughout what we've been doing. We've brought people on, we've given frameworks, we've given our opinion. But now that we're the Treasurer has talked about the R word, Ben, and formally declared the R word. Clearly, it's putting into focus that as a result of COVID-19, there was really two groups of people. There was the group of people who had income security through their job remaining, and then there was people who had income insecurity through their job disappearing. And if you talk to both camps, one might have been in a scenario where the only difference was life was just a bit different. They stayed home a bit and couldn't go out as much. And on the others, you just had this world of pain. People losing jobs, not being able to make commitments, in some cases not being able to pay any of their basic utilities, Ben. So I thought today it might be good to really process what that looks like, because I want to say that, sure, job security was the king through COVID-19, but even bigger than that, we want to repivot the strategy, because we've always talked about passive income, but passive income and income security is way more important than just job security. So I thought we might touch on that today, Ben.
Yeah, it sounds good, Bryce. And I think one of the things that we've had a small conversation around, but I want to sort of dive deeper in today about, it's really highlighted to us in regards to those people who had saved for a rainy day and who had prepared themselves for a situation where, a black swan event like what we've seen. Those people had put money aside, they'd put preparations aside, and they were calmer and more measured during this time. But obviously with 30 years or thereabouts of positive economic growth, and there's a lot of people who didn't think that these types of things were possible, right? And it was a big surprise to them. And so, what we've been also trying to teach people, as well as mindset, is the actions and behaviours that need to support those. And that is the delayed gratification, that is preparing, that is setting up your money to trap the surpluses. And what we're also now seeing here now, Bryce, is those people who are in a better position. We're seeing record numbers of people coming into the share market. Now, that could be a dangerous thing in terms of they may think that, okay, well, especially how the market's been going of late, that there's easy money to be made here. Trust me, it's not easy money. Just remember, at the end of the day, you're investing in businesses. Some of those businesses will be challenged into the future as we see the stimulus start to wean off. So it's really important that people understand that when you have these types of opportunities, that you take full advantage of them or you learn from them. So for those people who are in a difficult situation, we empathise with you enormously, but we also say, now every time you make decisions about spending money discretionarily, really make that decision based on what it's going to do for you in terms of happiness and fulfillment, as opposed to short-term need or whatever it is that you're looking to get. Because with my whole of heart, Bryce, I can honestly go into households who are battling and struggling, and I could look back through their last 3 or 4 years of decisions that they've made, and I could probably find at least 3, but usually about half a dozen decisions that they've made that haven't been in the best long-term interests of their family. And so, that's why we've got the My Wealth portal. That's why we've got this opportunity for you to organise your money, trap the surplus. For the
Do you want to
other
give some examples, Ben? I think the community would find that interesting to think about, because the people that made those decisions, obviously at the time didn't think that they were bad decisions, but the rear vision mirror has proven that they were.
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, bearing in mind that there is definitely a section of the community where every dollar counts, Bryce, and I've identified those people before. Those people who have potentially no income, mental health issues, disabilities, single females who didn't plan to be in the situation that they're in with, children that they've got to survive. So they are absolutely at that bottom end, and they do require a safety net. And I'm all for safety nets at that level. But what I'm talking about potentially here is from all walks of life, where you can have senior executives who are on $250,000 a year but are still living paycheck to paycheck. Now, they are making decisions on the cars that they drive, the debts that they take on, which are on depreciating assets and not appreciating assets. So there's examples of holidays that they have that technically didn't need to be holidays in 5-star locations. There's literally tens of thousands of dollars in those households, Bryce, that just didn't have to be had, right? That's a discretionary choice that they've made. That money could have been saved, trapped, and they could have made more money. And make no mistake, we all know the facts of these, that the more you earn, the greater your ability to make more money from that money. There is no doubt, right? There is a threshold level that is the minimum that you need, which is shelter, food supply, and also clothing and just the basic essentials. But let's get down into the more difficult conversations that people are having in that maybe the lower socio-demographic area as well. The mistakes that they are making is also about what they are prioritising their money for. So, some of those people will still continue to gamble. Some of those people will still continue to have, and I'm getting into some really dangerous territory here, but alcohol, tobacco, those things cost thousands of dollars. Now, I realise that they are addictions and they are difficult for people to handle, but that is money that, if push comes to shove, how important is that $50 packet of cigarettes? How important is that $50 box of beer or whatever that is to their overall circumstances? The same sort of thing in regards to, decisions that they're making about the electronics that they have in their household. Does it have to be the top end grade of electronics? Could it be a mid-range grade? Those types of things. Now, all of those things are conscious decisions that you are making around the need. So you might have a need for a television, you might have a need for a tablet, you might have a need for a laptop for school education, but then there's different grades and price points and all of those types of things. So it's those types of challenges, and I know I'm being really direct here, Bryce, but it is those types of examples that I can bring up all the time in households that are making those types of decisions. The other one is when they didn't have the money, obviously using credit to do that, justifying it in their mind that they needed to have those types of opportunities and have that type of experience for the short term, but ultimately then caught in a debt cycle of having to pay that back. Buying a brand new car with debt as opposed to buying a second-hand car that's reliable and safe and without debt, or with 30 to 50% less debt than they absolutely had to buy. It's those types of questions that every household has to make, and part of our mission here in terms of while we've gone after the money management story is to have honest but direct conversations with those people, because if they're not going to change those behaviours, and if they're going to spend every dollar that they earn now, then they aren't going to get today's message very well, Bryce, which is this deep dive into trapping that money and that surplus.
Hey, Ben, there's a couple of things that you said that I think require some emphasis. My observation in chatting around the circles that I mix in is that one of the biggest challenges, clearly with COVID-19, was a financial challenge, but I think an even bigger challenge was a mental health challenge. And so people are going into places that they never thought they'd have to do. If you think about somewhere between 4.5 to 5 million people, Ben, who are now currently in the workforce, were not in the workforce back in 1991 when we went into a recession. Ben, I was in year 11. So this is the first time I've actually been into a recession when I've been working, but clearly I experienced my father going through it, and I remember what those interest rates felt like, and I remember what the austerity felt like. But the mental health is the biggest challenge, Ben. And one of the reasons I continue to shine a light to our community on my good friend Jamin and his teachings is because I think that's where it all starts. If you think about the fact that what I wanted to say is what we've learned through the pandemic, and a lot of people who can will relate to this, is it was no longer about where can I get a better holiday and where can I get a better car. It was about, can I afford to keep my roof over my head? Can I afford to put food on the table? And is there anywhere in town that can actually give me some toilet paper, Ben? So it really became down to the basics. So I guess what we wanted to reset today is to remind folks that you talked about a couple of anecdotes which I think were really powerful, but we've said it all along. This is a Dave Ramsey quote, Ben. Money is simple, behavior is hard, because money is incredibly simple. Money smarts is incredibly simple, but it's the behavior that we have around how we get significance from ourselves, whether it's through our job, through the income we have, through the car we drive, through the house that we live in, through the holidays that we take. I think there is an opportunity that the pandemic's provided is to help people reset what's important, because what became really important is, can I still do the basics, Ben? Can I still keep my family safe, and can I still keep them warm, and can I still keep them fed? So really, it's about understanding why you mentioned before, and you did say it was sensitive territory. Why do you have the need to drink more than just a casual drink? Better understanding that. Whatever the addiction is, some people the addiction is shopping, Ben. Some people the addiction is getting attention on social media. Whatever you are addicted to get some form of significance, it's better to reset and go, okay, there's two things. I'm okay as I am, but two, it's really about being able to provide the basics. So with the vehicle, I want to talk about the vehicle of property investment first, Ben. And what I notice for a lot of people is they get intimidated at the thought of investing in property, because some of the images, some of the imagery that you see, we've talked about this before, Ben, but some of the imagery that you see is around flash. It's around significance from material wealth. Now, I'm going to say, I've told a story a couple of podcasts ago. I was a tosser that was chasing some of those material things before, so I'm certainly not immune to it, but I know what it's like to, go. I used to drive a European car. Now I drive a basic, a Korean car, right? So the importance about getting some of these basics right, because the facts are, and we've proven it through guiding our client base towards the summit, is that we know that you can actually build a portfolio of property that provides you with a passive income. We talk about 2,000 a week, but it doesn't have to be that. But we can show you how to provide a passive income with 3 to 5 properties, which was, when we first came on, Ben, was a unique story that was being told, because a lot of people were saying, I need significance through property investing, so therefore I need to have 20 properties, or I need to take on heaps of debt and be a massive property developer, or look at all the renovations that I've done, or look at me. And those things are fine, and there's some people who are doing incredibly well. But what we've observed is the majority of people feel really uncomfortable about getting into excessive amounts of debt, and the majority of people feel uncomfortable about backing themselves into property investment without having a clear, certain path on what you need to take to know, first of all, what the summit is, and two, knowing what the summit actually entails getting. So you and I wanted to today just to remind our community that you don't need 10 plus properties, you don't need to renovate, you don't need to redevelop. It's actually possible to reset what's important to you, be very clear about where you're going, and to do it in a conservative, get-rich-slow capacity, Ben.
Right. I mean, it highlights just basically the audience for the podcast, right? So let's say we've got 50 to 70,000 listeners a week, right? And which is wonderful, but of a population size of adults, which is probably, flowing around that sort of 13 to 15 million range, it's like we are talking to already an audience that are interested in this topic, right? The aspirational audience. So I know I'm polarizing. I know I push the boundary on this idea that you can't come to me and say I've got no money and then not allow me to go back through your history of 5 years and show you half a dozen things that could have significantly changed that story, right? Now, I know that the behaviour is hard, but it's like until you're broadened to that side of it, then I'm going to be a little bit more polarising, right? Because I'm trying to have a firm conversation with those people. On the other side of the coin, which is, you said there's been 2 audiences, and the audience that is predominantly our audience, Bryce, is aspirational Australians who want to have that little bit extra, that little bit more, and not rely on the government to provide for them. And that has been our mantra all along. You don't need to be a squillionaire. You don't need to have the fancy cars and the image that goes. You just need to buy 3 to 5 really good investment properties over 20 or 30 years. And that is transformational for your wealth. It's transformational for your passive income. And it's potentially going to leave a legacy of which the next generation can build on. And so at no point in time, pandemic or no pandemic or the next black swan event that occurs, whether it be global turmoil and who knows, wars. I don't know what's coming around the corner. But the point being is, if you know that you've got a financial secure base, half your worry is gone. Then you know, and that's our story here, and that's what I hope is one of the big lessons. It hasn't been spoken about yet because we're still in the middle of the pandemic, but we're getting early into that conversation around, see, you do need to plan for tomorrow. See, your situation can change rapidly. What defence have you put in place in terms of that? And I think that's a really important message, that don't rely on others. You know, that great picture that was around years ago when all of that sort of motivational stuff was out there. You know, don't let the ship come into the shore. You know, row out to it to meet it. Right. Take the opportunity to put yourself into a better position, and that is the delayed gratification. And I realise it's hard because you don't see that tree growing quickly every day, right? That's a slow growing tree, and so we can get derailed, distracted, change, pivot, turn, be impatient. All of those things are the derailers. But the reality from our point of view is, trust me, we've done that journey. We're 25 years into that story ourselves, and we've got passive income coming from our properties. So we're just telling you how we've done it, and we've got you some excellent frameworks that sort of should, if you stick by those rules and those frameworks, you'll reach the summit.
Yeah. So the positioning that we wanted to place into our community and our marketplace is that it's possible to do this, Ben, with 3 to 5 properties. Ben, it would be fair to say, anecdotally, the majority of the plans we build for clients, and we're building hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things each year, would be in the 3 to 5. In some cases, they need to be more than 5. It's the outlier. And in some cases, it's 2. Again, that is the outlier. Typically speaking, it's 3 to 5 investment properties. I mean, I remember we had Martin, who came into our building, Ben. He did a plan, and we said to him, look, there's nothing left for you to do, Martin. Stop. You're done. Don't buy any more. And I remember the look. He's like, are you serious? You're telling me not to go and buy any more? We said, no, you don't need to. All you need to do is continue to do what you're doing and retire out your debt, and you'll achieve the goal that you're chasing. Incredibly refreshing for him, right? And that it also gave him the confidence to say, well, okay, you know, I'm a professional lawyer. I can actually back myself now to actually go out and start my own practice, because based on the confidence that you've just provided me. So again, folks, the overarching suggestion that we want to make, and for the avoidance of doubt, and for the people who've only been listening to our podcast for the last 100 or less podcasts, Ben, we are not about the jazz hands. We are not about the sparkle. We are about providing people. You called it the black swan, the X factor. We want to prepare people for the next X factor, so that they do not have any job security. They do not look at the images of people lining up out the front of Centrelink, Ben. We do not want them to. We want our community to thrive and see those images and do whatever they can to help those people, but not have to be in the anxiety that they're in it themselves.
That's right, Bryce. And we also know, based on the evidence that we're seeing from APRA and just the general evidence in terms of the acceptance of the politics associated with people being successful and having 10, 20 or 30 properties, that's political fodder, right? And that also does this divide between the haves and the have-nots. So we do think that there will be political pressure on only being able to borrow to have 3 to 5 anyway. So we've been, you know, ahead of the curve in regards to that conversation that we've been having with our clients to sort of say, get good properties. It's still a tailored solution, but when we're talking about it in terms of for the general punter on the podcast, it's basically, we've summarised it as 3 to 5, $2,000 a week. That's how we've summarised it. But every client, as you say, we do hundreds and hundreds of plans each year, and we buy hundreds and hundreds of properties for our clients. But and every plan is completely unique for those people who are coming in to get that level of attention. But we're trying to synthesise that into bite-sized pieces that the community can grab and educate themselves and not make the mistakes, not be caught up by the spruikers, and then organise their money, work out that every dollar has a job to do, and then make that money work harder for them.
I mean, if anyone's listening to us at any length, Ben, they'd be disappointed if they were looking for get-rich-quick tactics, because we don't do any of them. We're conservative in nature. So, folks, first of all, that's around the vehicle. So let's be really clear to prepare you for the next X factor. The goal is to have a home, and not always, you can do a reinvesting strategy, but typically speaking, the goal is to have a home over your head plus 3 to 5 investment properties so that you can provide that passive income. So that's the tick from the actual vehicle, Ben. The next thing is around going, okay, that's fine, but a lot of people might be thinking, well, I can't afford it though, Ben. That makes sense, but I can't afford it. But it's interesting to see how if it's only 3 to 5, it's not 10 plus, you don't need to get any funding to renovate, or you don't need to get any funding to redevelop. Essentially, it becomes coming down to a combination of implementing money smart, so you can trap more surplus, so you can be more efficient. The thing with money smarts, Ben, too, is you want to spend lots of money on things that you absolutely love. If you love lattes, or you love there's something that you love, you need to quarantine some money so you can spend as much as you'd like on that. But then you have to be almost gazelle-like in finding ways to spend as little as you possibly can on all the other things, Ben, so that you can trap more surplus. So that's one. And then two, there are ways that you can find money in the existing budget to fund an investment property that doesn't mean that you have to seriously compromise your lifestyle.
Yeah, Bryce, I think there's 2 points there for me, right? The first one that you were focusing in on just sort of said, you do need to organise that money. And one of the observations I've had, and the benefit of being old, is that as your income grows and your portfolio moves from negative to positively geared, you can actually have a little bit more. Like a lot of people want all of the spoils now in terms of the discretionary spending that they're doing. As you get older and your career improves and your income improves, if you've based your models on having a certain income and growing that income at, say, a 2 to 3% per year, but all of a sudden you get a promotion and you're working hard and you work and you're enjoying the work, there's all this extra money that comes in. Some of that can still be spent on a better holiday. So it's not just about sort of saying I need to live on baked beans and toast until I'm 55. That's ridiculous. No one will stay that course. Not living in the amazing country that we live in today and seeing all of the spoils that are available to us. So if your footy membership's important to you, and going to the footy is important, you keep doing that. But there is a group of people who don't have a lot of surplus that would need to make those sacrifices. They absolutely need to separate out discretionary from essential spending just to get that nest egg that bit bigger that it needs to be, right? To save that deposit for the home. They're gonna have to make those sacrifices. And it was no different when I bought my first property across the road from my parents, is that I saved up $20,000 because I didn't necessarily go out. I've told the story, Bryce. We would go down to the Bundoora Lawn Bowls Club and play bingo on a Friday night as 18-year-olds.
Yep.
And if we won the bingo, because each game was 50 cents, right? If we won the bingo and we won the jackpot of $50 for the night, or we won the big one, the $100, then we'd go out and have a few beers. If we didn't, we were getting cheap beers at the bowls club, and we would go home, right?
Yeah.
And so they were the things that we did. We didn't go into the city and do the nightclubs and buy the spirit drinks and all that. We didn't have to. We were, in terms of we were making conscious. Did I feel like I missed out? No, I'm with my mates. I'm having a few beers. We're wrapping up the week. What's been happening to each other? And if we won, we pulled our cash, and if we won, we'd go out and have a few more beers. So I think there is a message here in terms of that first piece around sometimes you're going to have to make some sacrifices to build up momentum. But when you get momentum built, there is a real chance that you're in a position where you can then, I suppose, hive off or segment off some more discretionary spending as you build that wealth up. And in some cases, you get a bonus, or things go better than expected. Your property portfolio's grown quicker than you expected because you've done the right asset selection or whatever it is. Also, sometimes you have a property that's got no tenant in it for 4 or 5 weeks, but you've got the buffer in behind you. So it's the amazing thing of compounding and the amazing thing of building up. Money makes money, Bryce.
Yeah.
It is so true. So I think that's the piece of that's the message piece on the front end. On the back end is, where do you find extra surplus? Well, you find it in consolidating debts, in restructuring debts, in looking at interest only versus principal and interest, and having that knowledge piece. And, you know, we take a deeper dive into that in the course, right?
Yeah, and Ben, it made me remember, he without a vision will perish. So that's where people get into, that's where the behaviour is hard, because if you don't have a goal that you're going towards, then you're running around chasing temporary highs, and that's where credit card debt comes in and all those sorts of things. But the amount of people that have not had a vision and then come and then got that certainty around where they're going, it's amazing. Not only does that certainty give them peace on the path that they're taking, but it also ramps up a 10x on motivation. Because like you said before around that discretion, like who wants to go and chop discretionary spend from their budget, Ben, without a vision? It's like, but if you've got a very, very clear goal on why you're chopping discretion, it's amazing how focused that you get and how much you can actually do that. So, hey, you talked about getting old before. Just a quick side note. I got up, jump in the shower this morning. Samuel, my youngest, who's 7, jumps in the bed with Andrew and they're chatting. She tells me the story later. He goes, Mum, I reckon I've lived for about 1 million hours. And Andrew just looked at him and thought, all right, well, he's 7. He probably doesn't have any context around 1 million. And she goes, well, how many hours do you reckon I've lived? And he goes, oh, geez, it'd have to be 1 billion, wouldn't it? She's kind of going, gee whiz. And then here's the bit where I thought the story would hopefully end. And she goes, well, what about Daddy then? How many hours has he lived? And he goes, oh gosh, he'd have to be 1 trillion, wouldn't he? And the reason I tell that story is I recently turned 45, Ben, and I've got this baby face that I always wanted to look older. And now all of a sudden I've hit 45 and I'm starting to think, oh, mate, I'm getting old. So when you said before, now that we're getting a bit old, I'm like, mate, speak for yourself. I'm still young at heart.
But
anyway.
It also shows you how quick society moves. Like, you know, the kid life is fast paced these days, right? And there is this sense that, you know, they want things and they're a lot more mature than they are. But the reality is we all go through challenges in our life, and, you know, we love, we lose, we have moments out of our control that we've got to deal with, moments that are in our control that, you know, that hopefully we've steered ourselves in the right direction on. So life isn't easy. Life is, you know, it's not one big fairy tale.
No.
But it just highlights to you that money is unfortunately important in terms of a base level. And as you keep building that up, you know, it gets to a certain level where it can provide greater happiness. And then at some point it gets to a greedy level where it doesn't provide any more happiness and it's irrelevant.
Well, so that's where the love of money gets in the way, Ben. That's where that proverb is around, you know, money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. Yeah. So there we go. So we've kind of knocked on the head how many properties you need, Ben. We've circled into, well, okay, a lot of people thinking, sure, that makes sense, but you know, I can't afford it. Well, clearly, and just for the benefit of people listening to this, we have a full cross section that we see on a daily, weekly basis. So we have executive level clients who come in here and clearly have an income that reflects their position. But I can assure you, Ben, we are across the whole spectrum of income levels, job types, blue collar, white collar, knowledge workers using their hands. So, you know, it's not like we've got this specific little niche of high income earners who can do it. There's a genuine cross section that we've been able to make these observations across many, many age groups, industry types, and income levels, haven't we? Yeah,
look, I mean, it's a joy to work with any household. It's a privilege. It's humbling in a way, Bryce, because these people are looking for guidance. They're looking for advice. And from that point of view, you know, giving them some clarity and some visibility on their situation. And like anyone, showcasing their potential, that's priceless, right?
That's exciting.
You know, that's what makes the work that we do on a day-to-day basis in here, and, you know, the team of people that we've got that does that work, that's what they love about the job. Yeah. There's some boring parts about the job when you've got a bank who's got to, you know, currently some banks have got like 36-day application assessment periods. Like, oh my God, right? You know, we can't control that, and so we've got to control the expectation of the guy. Like, you want to go with this lender? Okay, well, it's going to be 3 weeks before they pick up our application. I mean, it's annoying. There's some difficult parts of the work that gets done, but overall, you know, the clients are entrusting us with this responsibility, and it's, you know, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to make a difference.
So, folks, there we have it. So we've talked about how many you need. We've talked about how we find some cash, and then the last bit left, Ben, is all right. Well, should I? That all makes sense. But what about the fact that I am buying in a market where I don't know what property to buy, and I don't even know if it's a good market to be buying? So I just want to remind people that the question is never, is now a good time to buy? The question is always, where is now a good time to buy? Because for anyone who's been listening to us for any length of time, Ben, we've banged on that much now that generalized commentary helps no one. So what we have observed is, I've talked about this before, Ben, some of my friends over in Perth who have got portfolios have been really disappointed for the last 10 years. But for the same time period, there's lots of people in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane and in Adelaide who've done really, really well. So there's clearly opportunity everywhere. But what we want to say is we've spent what are we up to now? 290 episodes. We've talked about what makes investment grade versus investment stock. So hopefully people are aware of what to buy and what not to buy. But Ben, I wanted to talk about. We talked about this in the height of the pandemic, which was a lot of hysteria and a lot of anxiety around at the time. On our very first podcast addressing the pandemic. But I thought it'd be nice to circle back to it now, just to remind folks why the 2020s could be a really good opportunity for folks.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not convinced now there's still some headwinds for property in terms of rentals, but we've really highlighted where the challenge stock is, right? We've highlighted that, we've consistently highlighted that, but it's even more heightened in the current pandemic, and that is medium and high density accommodation. That's the stuff that's being reported in terms of properties being sold for less than what people bought them for. I haven't come across any freestanding houses in established areas where people are getting less than what they paid for those properties. So the losers we've highlighted. They are also elevated and highlighted in regards to the lack of rental demand, and we're seeing that in regards to the reports coming out around vacancy rates in higher density locations where a lot of that high density stock is. They're struggling. And they will continue to struggle until immigration doors are opened, and also the international students, the remaining 30% of them, haven't come. Now, interestingly enough, I saw a report on ABC last night where the reporter in China had been ringing all of the education agencies. So what they do is they go through a middleman, and the demand for Australia, even though the propaganda over there about racist Australia, there's more people applying for Australian universities in China right now for next year because of two things. The basket case that is the US on two fronts, obviously on their racial riots and Black Lives Matter cause going on over there, which we fully support, and also the COVID outbreak and the pandemic and the fact that they haven't done a good job in managing that. So the preferences from those agencies on the ground in China is the UK and Australia first, because one, we've got the pandemic maintained for now, and two, we're a relatively safe place to live, and people know that in terms of the vast majority of Australians aren't anti-Asian. It's a minute pocket that get the oxygen of the media because it's a fear story and fear sells. So if we know that that's coming, we know that this immigration story is coming in. So that's the poor underperforming pocket of property that's going to still have a while to pick up over the course of the next six months. But the other side of it, Bryce, is this incredible story of the wave of demand, and this is why we were so confident in the property market even when others were telling us it's worse than the GFC, it's going to be a problem, is that this property increase, this property demand increase is not being led by investors. This is a surge of owner occupiers and a surge of first home buyers. And that's what we were seeing in February. And when we say, yep, 10 or 20% of the population were going to lose their jobs, that still meant that 80% of the population weren't going to lose their jobs. And ultimately that meant that there were still going to be enough potential buyers in the property market to carry us through, and we weren't going to see the hysteria on property prices that was, touted in the media, and we stood firm on that view. And at this stage in time, we look pretty safe in terms of that view. So I think that was the message, and what I'm seeing now, based on the new stimulus that's been announced, that there are a lot of firsties coming into the market, and there's a lot of owner-occupier activity, and that bodes well for a very, very positive market inside the next 6 to 12 months. And then next year, as the market starts to move, there will be a spike in interest from investors, and then we will see the immigration story return. And I just feel like the Australian economy is going to be poised for strong economic growth with that last mile. That last mile being opening the borders for immigration first, and then opening the borders for international tourists. And then all of a sudden, we will be well placed with the interest rates at the levels that they are. It bodes incredibly well for a positive, broader story. And then you can pick the eyes out of it at the current market based on the supply and demand drivers that we've been consistent with, because we've also told everyone who listens 80% of the return you're going to get is in the location that you pick, and 20% on the property, with the caveat being the medium and high density apartment market.
Yeah, good observations, Ben. I grew up over in Perth in middle class Australia, right? So I reflect on that because I think I was culturally very sheltered, Ben. And I remember because I grew up, like my parents bought the land in 1986. They built the house. We moved into it in 1987. I think the whole house and land package was $41,000. So I grew up in a subdivision, Ben, and so my parents still live in that house. And so from that, I always reflect, particularly as I come to live on the East Coast, that I think I was culturally sheltered, right? But because I heard the term Australia is the lucky country, but I just didn't know what that meant. And I remember when I had some friends come over from South Africa, and they described to me some of the challenges that they faced in personal security, people breaking in, the way they look over their shoulders, the fear that they had. And they go, you guys just don't have, they're being, they weren't trying to be controversial. They go, you just don't have the perspective, Bryce, on how lucky you are. And I think what happens through this pandemic is, for anyone who can relate to that, because there's a few people in listening to this who fully get that we're the lucky country, but it really does remind us that we have our own sovereign border, we have wonderful lifestyle, we have stable government, we have banks that just don't let you send your keys back on a Monday morning and move out of your house. Like there are so many check boxes and ticks that you can get along the way that make not just the lifestyle we have so wonderful, but so incredibly different to some of the other places around the world. And the fact that our separation is our strength, but it also can be our weakness in terms of appreciating what that lucky country means. And I think for those folks who, we had a few people write in and tell us that they're opposed to that immigration, but the fact that we do have this amazing lifestyle means that we need to think outside the square. We will move from a manufacturing economy to a knowledge economy where most of the skilled work will come from using your brain, because we have to be able to do that to be able to maintain the lifestyle, still be able to attract the people, and still keep our wealth base stable. So again, we talked about this recently, but during the height of the pandemic, but the fact that the 20s are going to have all this amazing immigration and people coming here saying, I'm just think about the decisions that people need to make to come here, to move here. They're enormous. So they want to send a postcard home saying, everything's great over here, I'm doing really well, I've secured a job and I've bought myself a house. And that's where that demand will come throughout the 2020s. Clearly the start of the 20s has been interrupted by, again, your thing, Black Swan, the X factor. But moving forward, those people will still want to come because those things will still remain. Therefore, Bernard Salt said this, we agree, that the 20s could prove to be the roaring 20s again, where there's an unprecedented level of demand for real estate in this country, given that we're highly urbanised. There's no, you go to America, Ben, and you go to the middle of the desert and there's Phoenix and Dallas and all these cities that they're not within cooee of the ocean, whereas Australia is highly urbanised in these locations. So those things bode really well for us for here we are in 2020, and as we look in the rear vision mirror in 2030, we'll see this as being an unprecedented time for growth in demand for property in Australia.
Bryce, did you know that, I think I was reading the stats and it was something like 460 people a day get the keys to their new home. So that's 460 houses across Australia are being built and people are getting the keys to those homes every day. Now, so everyone's like, well, that's a fairly reasonable number. Like when you start to sort of visualise 460 houses in suburbia being delivered, that's a day, right? And that is only going to increase. And those people who don't believe in immigration, well, if they don't, Bryce and I wouldn't be here. So it's a naive view, and again, I know I'm polarising on that, but the reality is I don't mind that because it's ill-informed, and it's that population growth that will support us in our later years in terms of the taxes that they will be raising to support those people who are less fortunate in medical and shelter and all the essential things that they need. So it is a naive view for those people who don't believe in population growth. And so I would say to them, continue your reading, because it does actually creates more jobs than it does in terms of impacting the existing jobs here. So that will be a thing. I realise there's politics around that for those people who just want a soundbite. But again, like we've always talked about, we won't do sound bites. Everything we talk about is based on the data and the research that we see, and that's why we've also been really confident. A few people have sort of been saying, Bryce, the only reason why the property market hasn't gone down is because of the stimulus that the government deliver. And I'm like, yep. And if you're educated in this space, you would know that that's exactly right. And so don't go, so that doesn't make it fair. You're investing money. It's not about fairness. It's about return on investment. If we are smart enough to invest into an asset class that's controlled by owner-occupiers who buy with their hearts, not their heads, and we can monetize that and support the tenants that are coming and the people who want to rent versus want to own as a portion of that population, that is a win-win all round. So I do feel that they're arguing this point, and if we are right and property prices do grow at the end of this year, seriously, I am going to be writing to Auntie, and I'm going to be writing to a few of those newspapers, and I'm going to say, I've seen 7 stories that you've done over the last 2 years where you have claimed house of cards, death by property, a property market blowing up from 60 Minutes to Four Corners to the 7:30 program to all of these other programs and sensationalist stories, and some people have acted on your information. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You potentially have caused those people unnecessary harm, as opposed to what you were saying before in terms of, they've put off their purchase or they've sold an asset because you told them to sell. Those people should have got independent advice about whether to sell or to hold based on the data of that local community, not necessarily a mass-produced story that has sensationalist one-line catchphrases that affect the property market and affect those people in those markets. You're playing with lives here, and that disappoints me.
And folks, just in case you're wondering if that's just Ben's opinion, it's not. He had a conversation with someone during the week who had that very thing happen to them, and it's devastating for that particular person's family, and it's very difficult for that person to be able to recover. So that is actually a real life case story that Ben was just describing. It's just not one of his opinions. So, hey Ben, you talked about fairness and justice before. I always think if there was real justice, there'd be no food chain. So we've got to get over the fact that in some cases things just aren't just, and we have to work around them. So
yeah, capitalism's not perfect, Bryce. I mean, I think it's really important to understand it, and we're also seeing how delicate democracies are as well with what's going on globally. I mean, true democracies are hard fought. The United Nations statements around every person has the freedom for religion, freedom for opportunity, freedom for thoughts, freedom for voice. Those things just don't happen that easily. So I'm not an advocate to say that capitalism in its purest form works, because that's greed and we don't want that. But I tell you what, I look at our economy here and I look at the standard of living that we have in this country, and I say we are very, very fortunate. And so you basically, to use the line from Shawshank Redemption, it's get busy living or get busy dying, right?
Oh.
And so from that point of view, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of thing, and no good thing ever dies. They're the types of views that you should be having around aspiration and saying, if it is to be, it's up to me to being a part of that story. So, that's the way I look at the world, and that's the way I sort of say to others, don't rely on anyone else. Get your team of experts around you and go. Go as hard as you can, as sensibly as you can, and then don't blame others for the mistakes. If you're not informed, or you're expecting someone else to do the heavy lifting for you, won't happen for you.
So again, good observations, Ben. So there you go, folks. So to summarise, to say that Ben and I are passionate about people going on the same journey that we've gone on with our families is an understatement, right? That's the whole purpose of this podcast. Now, I just wanted to mention to folks that we feel that we've been able to fulfil the void to help people reach the summit of a passive income in two ways up until this point. First way, prior to the podcast, we had a business. In 2020, we still have that business, and we're very, very proud of that. So if someone wants us to help them, we can do that, and we're fully equipped to do that. And we think we've got a team of A graders that can do that. On the other spectrum, Ben, we've wanted to fill the void, and we've been doing it for over 5 years, 290 episodes plus all the bonus episodes. We're well over 300. To try and give people as much information as we can for free through this one-to-many platform where people can pick up stuff. And we've had lots of people send us anecdotes to say, hey, listen, I bought this property. It wouldn't have done it without the principles that you guys talk about, and we're well on our way, which is really great. So clearly we've launched a course this week, Ben, because we've been able to fulfill the done for you through our business. We've been able to fulfill the do it yourself through the podcast. And then we just wanted to fill the space around someone who wants it done with them, where they get a little bit more of an intimate experience. So what we did is we developed a course. We've called it Start and Build. You can go to thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build. And you can see all the details there, Ben. There's lots of notes, and you can see what we've done, and we're really proud of that. But I just wanted to say, for 290 episodes, Ben, we've pretty much been ad-free. Maybe 10 to 15 episodes, we talk about, why don't you come and listen to a webinar? Why don't you come and talk to our buyers agents? Why don't you, have a look at locations?
We've got research, we've got some research platforms that we charge location score, suburb growth, those types of things. So yes,
so we're generally trying to provide as much information as we can for free. But there's been some times when we've put a little advert up for our own books, our own business, all those sorts of things. But what I do want to say is we're proud of the fact we've launched this course, Ben. We're proud of the fact that we've priced it at a point where typically, and just so people know how the education business works, for us to make serious amounts of money selling courses, Ben, for it to work, we need to be charging $5,000 plus, and a lot of people need to do it for $10,000. That's how the person selling the pickaxes makes more money than the miners. Now, Ben, I just want to assure everyone we are nowhere near that price point. The idea of where we've priced it is so people can afford it. So I want to encourage everyone who's interested in achieving what we've talked about from episode 1 is to take you to the summit of passive income. We've done a course that's got, Ben, 3 modules, 14 lessons, over 12 hours of teaching. where instead of just hearing our voice, we're actually showing you how it's actually done. And in one of the bonuses, Ben, we've actually got a fly on the wall where they can look over your shoulder on how you've built a $1,000, $2,000, and $3,000 per week passive income. The nuts and bolts, how you've done it, how you haven't licked your finger and put it up in the air, how there's some real science behind that. So I just want to encourage the portion of our community, the do-it-yourselfers. Keep listening to us each week. We're going to bring the very best that we possibly can to you each and every week, and we want to continue and encourage you to do that and share it with your friends. We'd love you to do that. For those who want it done for you, we'd certainly love to talk to you within our own business. We feel like we've assembled a team of A-graders that will absolutely help you in that path. And then, Ben, for the segment of the people who just want a little bit more help, but they don't want to fully outsource it to someone else, I just want to encourage them to go to check out Start and Build at thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build to check out what's on offer, because we feel like that enables us to serve everyone in our community at the level that they want to be served at.
Yeah, Bryce. I mean, the services that we do offer, such as the My Wealth portal and those types of things. Yes, we do have our clients on there. We've got over 6,000 clients who use that portal. But to give the listeners a little insight in terms of maintaining, managing, developing out some of those applications and so forth, we'll be spending over $500,000 on further development and maintaining and security and all of the things that are around that. So we're trying to make sure that we can keep some level of, we've pledged it'll always be free. The version, the money smarts will always be free, and we know people have got as much as 3 years of their data in there, so that is not going to change. There will be no surprises there. But like anything, there's no such thing as a free lunch. We've got a team of people that do the development, fix the bugs, find develop it out, have it. We've got a help desk that's available there that we have to pay the costs on. So yes, we are putting our hands up today to say, okay, this is advertorial for our own self-interest in terms of that. But we know that a lot of those funds will be reinvested in terms of providing our community with more and more opportunity to develop their skill sets and change their lives and achieve financial transformation, which is what we're about. And that's why we're so passionate about the tools, the books, the education courses, the free content, the downloads, the frameworks is all part of that. And yet, obviously there's people that have got to be paid to do that work.
So, folks, if you've benefited from being a part of our community, you want to take it to the next level and see if we can help you get to that summit a little bit quicker, I certainly want to encourage you to go and check that out. Again, for those of you who are just happy to stay listening to us on the podcast, we appreciate you. We've been excited by building this community over the last 5 years. That won't change. We'll still bring our very best. But if you want to go and check that out, just go to thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build. That's the name of the course, Ben. Either if you need to know how to start a portfolio, Ben, that's why the start is in there. And if you need to know how to continue to build one, if you already are a property investor, Ben, so it really covers both people. So, folks, go and check that out. We'd love for you to give us some feedback and let us know what you think. So, Ben, before we go into what's making property news, because we're going to talk about some topical news, I just want to do my life hack today. But before I do, I just want to read something out to you, Ben. There's something that was sent in to me from one of our listeners. Harsh is this person's name. Hi, team B.P.S, in brackets, Ben, Bryce, Emma, and the Stig. Now, Emma from our team was particularly excited because those listeners know that there's always you and me and Ibis, but Emma is a very big part of our team as well, so she was excited to be mentioned there. Hey, can't thank you enough for providing me a sense of direction in lighting my journey of wealth creation. Let me explain. Being a quick learner, it took me only 35 years of my life to realise I need to give serious thought into wealth creation / retirement planning. Till then, I'd already bought some investments without much diligence, in brackets real estate, and some money in shares, in brackets Maya IPO. Let's not go there, please. Not a big reader, in brackets, goes with my quick learning. I knew I had to rely on audio / video format for my knowledge accumulation. Someone told me podcasts are a thing and I should give it a try. I stumbled across your podcast in the business section when looking for top rated ones. I subscribed and started listening from the current episode amongst other podcasts that I subscribed to at the time. For a newbie, all property podcast hosts seemed experts, and very quickly I got confused on who I can trust as messaging was different, Ben. One thing that differentiated the TPC was that there was no promotion of their business, and I literally had to Google their names to learn about Empower Wealth, even after 20 odd podcasts. Some other podcasts felt like self-promotion material with little property info added in between. It's been almost 2 years now, and I listen to TPC religiously, and I recommend it to everyone who would listen to me. However, I never went back to the first few episodes, as Bryce keeps reminding me each time. For the last 20 months of listening to you, I'd been skipping that last 45 seconds or so. Come on, no one does that, surely. I put in a lot of hard work for that last 45 seconds. That last 45 seconds
Sounds
or so.
like I did my did you know though, Bryce? But
so the last 45 seconds or so of every podcast, so I don't hear Bryce reminding me to go back to episode 1 or listen to TPC 20. I always thought I need to keep up to date on what's happening today. Why would I want to listen to something they talked about years ago? Then COVID-19 happened, Ben, and I had a lot more time, not just to listen to Bryce at the end of every podcast, but also to go back and start at episode 1. And OMG, I couldn't believe that I was what I was missing and should have listened 2 years ago. This is literally gold, and something not just every investor should listen to, but also every professional looking to start as a buyer's agent / property planner. I'm usually not a person to leave reviews, etc. However, I thought I need to share my story to enlighten others who would have been like me, skipping the last 45 seconds of each podcast and not going back to episode 1. I wish to thank you in person one day, in brackets post-COVID-19, of course, as writing a review online does not feel enough for what I've gained from listening to you. Until then, have only one more thing to say, Ben. Here it is. Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. So, Harsh, what I want to say to you is thank you for highlighting something to me that clearly there's a portion who skipped the last 45 seconds, which is fine. But the reason I put that in there is because it's actually a fast track, Ben, to getting the foundations, because if you can't listen to the first 20, we've prepared a download that summarizes that, which I talk about at the end of everything. But when you say
free download,
Ben. But the bit here, I wish to thank you in person one day. Harsh, what I want to say to you is this. Please implement all of the teachings that we've given you over the last 290 episodes, particularly those first 20. Implement them. Be the person who is actually prepared to act on the knowledge, and then one day come and shake our hand and said, I did the things that you said that I should do, and it's made all the difference, and I now have a passive income for life. That is the ultimate, Ben, in terms of what we hope to achieve with people listening to those first 20 episodes, Ben, and downloading the summary so that they can actually set themselves up for success, not set themselves up for failure. So it's no surprise today that my life hack, Ben, is go and download TPC 20 guide so that you can fast track your knowledge and come up to speed, so that every podcast you listen to from this day forward, Ben, will be on the basis of having foundations that everyone else is experiencing, so you know exactly what we're talking about and why we're talking about them. So that's
where do I find that download, Bryce?
I knew you'd ask that. thepropertycouch.com. I haven't done this for a little while, Ben. .com.au/TPC20. Thank you.
And if you can't put all that in, I think there's a thing called free stuff, right? Just go into the free stuff and you'll see all of the free download stuffs and all of that stuff that you can grab. So, and if you've got time and you want to listen to the audio stuff as well, we were pretty rough and ready back in the day, but authentic, as we like to say.
Going to show the growth.
Had no clue. We still don't. Just a couple of bullheads talking about the world and property and money management. So that's where we get.
The only difference between now and then is we know each other's style a bit better now, and I just know I've got to wait for you to take a breath.
Yeah, let me rant. The other thing we need to do for Harsh is obviously it's got to be a free course. We've got to. So Harsh, a free course, Start and Build's coming your way. Round out that knowledge. As you say, if you don't like reading anything, it's on demand audio, perfect for you, and
property investment
video, I should say, on demand video.
Hey Ben, what's making property news? Well, actually, there's a big one that we'll talk about. But,
we're just going to drill into this one. It's the main one. Obviously, it was announced last week, and I'll tell you. I'll read through just the eligibility, right? Because I just want to get that eligibility out there so everyone knows if they've been under a rock in terms of what's available. So it's called the HomeBuilder. It's for owner-occupiers, and they must meet the following criteria. You're a natural person, not a company or a trust. You're aged over 18 years or older. You're an Australian citizen. You meet one of the following two income caps. For a single person, 125,000 annual per annum of individual applicants based on the 2018-2019 tax return or later, or 200,000 per annum for a couple based on both 2018-2019 tax returns or later. You enter into a building contract between the 4th of June 2020 and the 31st of December 2020 to either build a new home as a principal place of residence where the property value does not exceed 750,000, so that is house and land, we've had that qualified, or substantially renovate your existing home as a principal place of residence where the renovation contract is between 150,000 to a cap of 750,000, and where the value of your existing property does not exceed $1.5 million. And the final thing there, construction must commence within 3 months of the contract date. Now, this received, on the whole, pretty positive responses from the industry, but a lot of economic commentators and social commentators in general, they just completely missed the point. I don't know what they were expecting in regards to, this is a very, very targeted piece of stimulus. That's
for a
really
specific period of time.
Yeah, it's basically the amount of work that the construction industry, because at the moment, everyone's gainfully employed in construction, but they worked out that come September, there's going to be a lot of tradies who are not going to be on the tools unless they had this stimulus. So the idea with this is, and we didn't want a repeat of the pink bats and the rushed program, and we didn't want to have to put new legislation in place. So
well, that was a bit of the criticism of it, particularly the renovation component, was it, that it was such a thin amount of people that can actually qualify. But it seems like the government has gone into prevention of rort mode and then reverse engineered. Because Ben, I remember I've talked about elements of this before, but I was working for the Queensland government when Kevin Rudd was throwing cash at GFC time. And there was clearly, there's a pink bats that you talked about, but there was certainly the stimulus package that he did at the time was actually successful because it was for social housing. But what I can tell you from the inside was there were developers running around, Ben. What they were doing is they were putting options on contracts, and then it would land on our desk, and we would either reject it or accept it, send it back to them, and then they would go and finalise. So they were just putting contracts on scores and scores of properties and playing the scattergun approach. So there's clearly people who create opportunism. And what you're talking about is a specific period of time, but also the government has actually, throughout this whole pandemic, have tried to make it in a way through existing channels, but also to make sure that the opportunists sit tight.
Correct. I mean, that was NRAS as well, right? If you remember, that was a lot of that.
Part of that.
So it was very targeted. Now we don't have an NRAS legislation anymore, right? So the whole idea is if you wanted to build some type of program for social housing, and let's make no mistake, I think there needs to be a stimulus for social housing in the budget that's coming up in October. I think that's a no-brainer. To basically, we've seen governments abandon social housing, and we absolutely feel that there needs to be some more support in that area. That said, there was no quick fulfilment program through that. This is really easy to fulfill. You've got building surveyors. If you build inside the plans and guidelines for a typical house in that sort of planning reg in that location, you can get a building surveyor, you get a draftsman or an architect. So now we've got draftsmen flat out, we've got architects flat out, we've got building surveyors flat out, and in a matter of months we're going to have another pipeline of a lot of building work that's going to be done. We've got obviously mass building construction houses, the Simmons, all of the big players who are building, the Porter Davises, all of that have now got a pipeline of work that's coming for this time, and so that's what its job was to do.
Yeah,
it's not
and
perfect.
It's good news for first-home buyers, Ben, because in some cases they can apply for zero stamp duty if they're at the right price point, plus get $25,000 on top, and they typically will definitely meet the threshold of under 750 and also the income threshold. So it's good news for firsties, and it means that they can get into the market. And
and for those commentators, including some economists who didn't get it right, they're sort of saying, well, why does the property industry get that? Well, here's the big story here, right? The unemployment rate might, as per Treasury's announcement this week, might only get to about 8, maybe 9%, right? Which is unbelievable considering what was forecast and all the doomsdayers and all of that. Now, that's because all the tradies are gainfully employed at the moment. Now, what the government was basically trying to do is the worst thing you could do for confidence and sentiment, which is what the RBA governor's sort of talking about, is having another 200 or 300,000 tradies hit the dole queue, right? So the idea is to retain those and then bring it down from 8% back down to 5%. And if we all know that unemployment is on the way down, and we feel good about the economy, which is what we've seen in the consumer confidence stuff, and I'll talk more about that in my monthly rant, my monthly RBA rant. This is the story, right? So it's not perfect, I get it, but the people say, I could have gone further, could have got more. It's like, you don't hear the tradies whinging. The vast majority of them are sort of saying it's going to be good for the retailers like the Reeses and all of those people who got at the supply chain.
Yeah, the multiplier effect is enormous for brand new construction.
Then when you've got to go and do retail, I've got to fit that house out. And what's great about that is we'll continue to see 460 odd people a day getting the keys to their new homes or keys to their renovated home or whatever that looks like. So that's why it's so important, because the government couldn't see an industry collapse. It obviously can't do anything about travel, and some governments could do more about tourism in terms of opening the borders, but that's a rant for another day. So ultimately, this is an area that they could make an impact on. They've put 668 million into it. The target is 20,000 dwellings, and hopefully that'll get us through that bridge until the new year, and then we'll basically see the property market continuing to move forward and prosperity continuing to grow for this country. So I'm not as negative as many.
No, it's not. Probably the only thing for me is the renovation is a really thin qualification criteria. Yeah. Really, the multiplier effect of brand new is a no-brainer. It's just but if there are a group of people who, in a low listing environment and they have a house that's worth less than 1.5 million, and they were thinking, well, why don't I just stay put where I am and upgrade what I've got? It's a nice little bonus for them. Yeah. The government will give you 25, and all you have to do is spend a minimum of 150. And you can borrow the money. You don't have to have the cash lying around. You can go and refinance to get it.
Yeah, you're thinking about it, and then this just got you over the line. Oh, there's 25 grand, and if the reno is only going to be 180 or whatever, that's a good portion of what the cost. Oh, let's go. So and it's not going to be for everyone. It is very targeted. But so that was the big news in the property market. Other than obviously in the Westpac sentiment survey, we did see another incredibly strong result for is it a great time to buy property, and that's obviously underpinning the property market and why we're not necessarily seeing negatives. And I mean, the way we're going, we could, and I'm not claiming this, I'm looking at my crystal ball, but we could be in positive growth territory by as early as September of this year, which is just ridiculous. I was sort of thinking probably last quarter, maybe December we would see, or November, December, we might see positive growth in property prices. We've still got the outlier being units in the sort of medium high density stuff is still a mess, but that would be extraordinary if it was the case. And now we're seeing, economists readjusting their forecast down to maybe 3 to 8% property price falls. Some are still holding at 10 and something, but I reckon some of those forecasts are probably more risk on the downside, meaning they'll reduce those down as opposed to the 20% pluses. And as I was earlier saying, I think that there is an argument now that every time they have their go-to people who predict 30, 40% property price falls and scare the public, I just hope the journalists will basically look at those stories in the light of day and make better judgment calls, whether it be the producers, the editors, and the journalists themselves, in terms of getting a bit more balance into those conversations and interviewing the subject matter experts maybe next time.
All they need to do, Ben, is go to Oz Property Live hashtag and see some of the evidence of what's happening. I can assure you, Ben, that my own team here, who's buying across multiple borders, Ben, so it's not like just in a concentrated area, there is more demand than there is supply for the type of property that we would buy. I can promise the listener that that is the case. There's certainly no conditions for supply to be exceeding demand. I can well and truly.
Well, I was talking to Jez, the Capital Growth King, and looking at the DSR again for this, for May, and it's holding. It's the scores are holding in all the main areas. So yeah, as I said, the only downside risk in the property space is the rental market. In terms of vacancy rates is going to be challenging in some pockets, and those apartments, which we've always said steer clear of anyway.
There you go, folks. Hopefully that's helped you reset what job security versus passive income security looks like in a not a post-COVID world. We're still in it, Ben, but as a result of COVID kicking off that discussion. So we certainly hope that's helped you. Again, folks, feel free to go over to thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build to check out if the course is something that you'd might like to participate on. Ben, you and I are going to do a Facebook Live tomorrow just for any folks in the afternoon. I think it's about 12 or 1 o'clock. So if anyone has any questions around that, we'll be there to answer those questions. So we'd love to take those. But mate, thanks for all your efforts today. With what is a very, very important topic to help people navigate, using your words, black swan events that may come up in the future.
It's all about confidence, Bryce, all about confidence. On that note, go the Pies. I mean, sorry, knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
Cheap shot, mate, cheap shot. See you next week, folks.
Hey there folks, Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listened to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarizes the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.